Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I, Kunal Hadole, extend a very warm welcome to all of you to the Pune International Center. It's a wonderful to see such an enthusiastic audience gather for a topic which could truly shape India's future. Turbulence in the global energy sector, policy options for India. Energy is at the heart of our nation's growth, and today we have the privilege of hearing from one of our leaders who has shaped India's energy sector in remarkable ways. Shrikant Vaidya, former chairman of Indian Oil Corporation. With over 37 years of exceptional service, he has led Indian Oil Corporations, one of the largest energy company, through record growth, bold innovation, and green transition. He ensured uninterrupted fuel supply during COVID-19, protecting the nation from a crisis. We are truly honored to have him with us this evening. Also, during this Russia-Ukraine conflict, he helped maintain stable energy prices for Indian citizens despite global volatility. Before we begin with today's proceedings, I kindly request all of you to please stand and observe 2 minutes of silence in remembrance of the victims of 26/11. Please stand. Thank you. Now may I invite Lieutenant General Vinayak Patankar, PVSM, UISM, VSM, Head of the Center for National Security Studies at Pune International Center to deliver the opening remarks. Sir, over to you again.
Jai Hind. Once again, let me add my own welcome to you all. Welcome to Pune International Center. I thought I'd take this opportunity before coming to the subject proper to, for those of you who are coming to PIC for the first time or have been infrequent in visiting us, a little bit about PIC and what we are doing and how we have come to this particular talk and the relevance of it. The activities at PIC cover a large number of areas. Apart from national security, which I happen to be involved in, we also have sustainable energy and mobility as an area of interest, and you'll hear some more about that a little later. We also deal with cooperative federalism and multi-level governance, geopolitics and geoeconomics, social innovation, and last but not the least, it's not just hard work and toil, but we also have art and culture. As far as the national security scene is concerned, we set up a Center for National Security Studies earlier this year, in fact, on Republic Day this year. It serves as a strategic platform dedicated to promoting informed dialogue as well as delivering actionable insights and inputs on subjects concerning national security. We'll talk about national security a little later, and instead of saying the Center for National Security Studies, but we call it CNSS. So CNSS actually fosters collaboration and supports evidence-based policy making to strengthen India's strategic preparedness. The collaboration, you can see that we are collaborating with a number of local institutions as well as those think tanks which are based elsewhere in our country. Through focused research and actionable insights, which I just mentioned a while ago, it contributes to shaping our nation's security priorities in a complex global and domestic environment. What does CNSS itself, how does it do its job? Just a brief introduction to our activities. We have talks by eminent persons such as the one today, domain experts and practitioners. Actually, today we have all three things rolled into one. He's eminent in his own right. and I'll speak about Dr. Vaidya in a moment. He's a domain expert by far and a practitioner for 37 years, as you just heard. Where possible, we try and make these interactive. Not always, but we do, because the other thing that we do to promote dialogue and to promote ideas and exchange of ideas, we hold roundtable discussions, workshops, and even brainstorming. Areas where we are still floundering or we are not exactly sure as to where we should be going, we usually end up doing brainstorming sessions, not one but multiple. Conferences such as Pune Dialogue on National Security, which, as many of you know, is known as the PDNS Dialogue. That used to be the flagship event, and it still continues to be. But now, after setting up the CNSS, our activities have expanded far more, much more beyond PDNS itself. We also hold book discussions. We'll have one next month on a very interesting topic about biological warfare. And in fact, it's not just warfare, but biological threats to us. Ever since the COVID threat or the COVID-19 shook the whole world, and we were no exceptions. So since then, the biological threat has actually occupied center stage in many ways, because that's the unseen and undetected one till you start getting the effects of it. So even as we speak, it could be happening. That's why it is such a diabolic kind of a threat. We also deal with publishing of policy papers or books. CNSS hasn't yet produced a book, but hopefully we'll do that as time goes. Now, if you're wondering what turbulence in the global energy sector or scenario has to do with national security, because many of us have the very narrow definition of security in our mind. We sort of equate that with defense. National security is not just defense. It's, as in the case of, let's say, defense of our land borders, our maritime zone, or our waters across the wide oceans, and of course the airspace. That's only one small segment of national security. It actually encompasses a very large range in every sphere of human activity, practically. I was just talking about it outside with one of our guests. In fact, one of our members, I would say, founder members. You have heard of course, food security, water security, energy security, economic security. You think of a field of activity where human beings are involved, or even where they are not involved, like cyberspace. Cybersecurity is another. So that kind of a thing, anything that impacts national security is our business. To add to this panorama of various types of threats and security issues, we now have action by violent non-state actors. Actually, they are no longer non-state in my definition. They are very much state-sponsored terrorists. So this non-state is just a cover. As far as the reality goes, they're all state-sponsored, because one after another, states are now sponsoring terrorism as a policy option, or taking up terrorism as a policy option. We also have narcotic cartels, organized crime, and all of them sort of are hand in glove. Somewhere or the other, they find some common ground and common interests. So they work together. Together, it makes for a very volatile and a very dangerous combination. We, of course, also have the possibility of security threats arising out of natural and man-made disasters, particularly when they happen close to our borders or close to our areas of interest. Let me come to the topic today. Now that I mentioned that we have an eminent speaker, and we're very fortunate to have him speak to us today. Coming to the topic, that is our country, we import 85% of our oil and more than 50% of our natural gas. The speaker will throw more light on this in any case. But looking at it from a security perspective, this is a very vulnerable area or a very vulnerable situation. At any time, if someone from whom we are importing these two commodities decides to turn off the tap, we will be in serious trouble. And where it will hit us, apart from hitting the common man, but it will also hit us as a country in terms of our development and our progress. Our economy, which is riding high right now, will be the most severely affected. Today, in fact, when I just mentioned that the speaker would be elaborating more on this, so I wouldn't be taking too long on this. But, and my colleague Kunal has briefly given a very brief introduction to Shri Vaidya. But let me highlight a few points in his career which he was not able to cover in that brief introduction. He's been virtually a leader of the petrochemical sector. And particularly in the last phase of his career, a very checkered career through 37 years, as I mentioned, associated from conception to commissioning. I'm actually going to read out because it is so vital and so important, I don't want to miss out even a single word. Associated from conception to commissioning of India's largest Panipat naphtha cracker complex, the backbone of Indian Oil's petrochemical profitability. Green hydrogen, biofuels, and sustainability. You will hear far more on this as the time goes. Conceptualized and launched India's largest green hydrogen plant at Panipat. Pioneered Asia's first 2G and world 3G, the generation, ethanol plants. Oversaw the launch of more than 10,000 EV charging stations. Now, this is a very challenging area, and 10,000 is a huge number, although I'm sure that's going to expand into lakhs very soon. But that's not all. This is his professional contribution, and I've only touched the tip of the iceberg. The social impact of his activities and his initiatives and his leadership is no less. He's been part of wellness programs, women empowerment, employee-centric culture across refineries and corporate offices within their own organization and elsewhere. He launched Prison to Pride and Smile for Juvenile for social rehabilitation, again a very important area. He supported the Olympic athletes who happen to be from Indian Oil's own employees, 210 plus athletes, 12 Indian Oil employees themselves, and overall many more athletes who were part of our contingent for the 2024 Olympics. He is also into heritage, wildlife, and coral conservation through Indian Oil's participation. So I could actually go on and on about his achievements, but that would take away from the time he has at his disposal to talk to us. So without further ado, may I request you, sir, to come and address us.
First and foremost, thank you, General Patnankar, for a very generous introduction. To begin with, I will start with the importance of oil. I mean, how important oil is today to the Indian ecosystem. We process in our country every day 5.4 million barrels of crude oil. And as he was mentioning, nearly 89% of it is imported. That's not a very healthy sign for a country like India. And over a period of time, we have seen that the domestic oil has remained stagnant, or in fact, it is falling every year. Last year, we imported about 240 million tons of crude oil, and the domestic oil was 25 million tons. And most of the oil, as you're well aware, comes from Bombay High. 80 to 85% of India's crude oil comes from Bombay High, and those fields are aging. The oil was discovered in the 70s, and now they're aging. And unfortunately, we have not struck any big oil so far. So it will not be far when our import percentage will become 90, 95, and so on and so forth. Regarding gas, today it is 55% we import. It is also going up because the Honorable Prime Minister had a vision to make India a gas economy. And today we are consuming about 6.5% in the overall energy pie as gas. It is likely to go to 15. So obviously this will come from imports. Now looking at the energy pie of India, energy pie means from where all the energy is coming to power this nation. 55% comes from coal, 27% comes from oil, 6.5% comes from gas. Now you can calculate yourself, about 7% is hydro, 6% is renewables, just 6%. Because most of the times when we read the headlines, we feel that the renewables are sweeping away the fossil fuels. No, it is not. Just 6%. And 1.5% comes from nuclear as on date. So the importance of fossil fuels is something I need not overemphasize. And the way the predictions have been there, in fact, 2025 has been a very different year. Till last year, 2024, most of the predictions of oil, they were given by either McKinsey or Wood Mackenzie, IEA, International Energy Agency. They were all saying that the peak of oil will come in 2030. Peak of oil means maximum oil the world will consume. Today, the world is consuming 102 million barrels of crude oil every day. So they said the peak will come in 2030. But in 2025, all have revised their predictions. In fact, the International Energy Agency now says that the peak oil will be 113 million barrels per day, and that will come in 2050. So till 2050, there will be a very steady increase in the oil consumption, and 50% of the increased consumption will come from India. Please understand, India is a hungry country for energy, and we are having two transitions to do. One is the transition from an emerging economy to a developed economy. That is one transition. And the second one is the energy transition. And whenever a country goes from an emerging economy to the developed world, the single most important barometer for progress is energy consumption. And how energy hungry we are, I'll just tell you about a simple example. Today, the per capita electricity consumption of India is 1,300 kilowatt hour per person per year. 1,300. The USA is 13,000. China is 6,000. And I think we all come from good families, well-to-do families. The average refrigerator power in our houses is about 300 to 450 kilowatt hour per refrigerator per year. In the state of Bihar, the per capita is only 330. So I think we consume more power in our house than probably what an average per capita consumption is happening in Bihar. So much is the scope for increase in the energy consumption. Same thing goes with Africa. I'll tell you a very startling example. London Heathrow Airport consumes more power than a country called Sierra Leone. I think you must have all heard of this country, Sierra Leone. London Heathrow Airport consumes more power. So that is the energy poverty that is there in India and in the African countries. And these will be the fulcrum of increased energy consumption in the days to come. Now, why it will be oil? You know why oil is so important? The reason why oil is so important is that the density of energy per drop of oil is something unparalleled. That one drop of oil gives so much of power no other form of energy can give, apart from nuclear, of course. Now, how the world has transitioned. The first known fuel to man was wood. Then it came to coal. Then there was a brief time when there was a thing called whale oil, the oil from the whales. Thankfully, we discovered the crude oil, so the whales were spared, and then it became crude oil. And the energy density of oil is such that no other form of energy can come to displace it. Just to give you the enormity of the energy scenario in the world, today the world consumes, if I convert all the fossil fuels into oil equivalent, that means oil as oil, coal if I convert to oil, and gas if I convert to oil equivalent, we are consuming 300 million barrels per day. That is the spread, reach, and the importance of oil as an energy for the entire world. And the corresponding figure for India is 24 million barrels of oil equivalent every day. What we are saying to displace this will be a Herculean task. And so far what I told you, from wood to oil, we have always transitioned from a low density energy to high energy density. Today, for the first time, we are trying to transition in the reverse direction. Solar and wind are very low density energy powers. So we are trying to displace oil by solar and wind, which will be something, let's wait and watch. So now coming down to the topic about the turmoil. So the dependence of energy on third party, on the outside world, is not something very good for the energy security of the country. And energy, as we all have discussed, is the fulcrum of everything. The country will come to a standstill if there is no energy. So energy security, energy sovereignty is absolutely number one on the agenda. So what do? We can't reduce the imports. It's very clear. Because we need it. The country needs to progress. The country needs to consume more and more. If you see the oil consumption today, in India, we consume about 1.6 barrels of oil per person every year. 1.6. USA is 20. China is 10. So we have a long way to go in becoming a developed economy. So the consumption is going to go up. So what do? We are highly vulnerable to imports. We can't reduce the vulnerability of imports because we need the energy. But what we can do is reduce the risk associated with the vulnerability. I'll explain to you what I mean. Japan is importing 95% of its crude oil. China is importing 77% of its crude oil. And Korea, South Korea, is about 90%. So these Asian countries are also not blessed with indigenous oil. They still import a large amount of oil. But what they have done is they have created huge strategic oil reserves. Japan, you won't believe, they have got 240 days of oil reserves. Now this oil reserves means reserves which the government has created, which the companies have created. So totally 240 days, 8 months. So even if there is any disruption, for 8 months, Japan is covered. Coming to China, it is 120 days. And South Korea is about 100 days. So I think one of the steps we can take is to have a very high degree of strategic storage so that any upheaval can be managed for some limited amount of time. Here, one more point I want to just highlight. if you have been following crude oil price, I think there are a lot of students here, the crude oil price for the last 2 years has been in the band of $60 to $70 per barrel. This is one of the most calm period for oil. Oil market, it appears, has matured. Now, no amount of headlines like US attacking Iran, Israel-Iran conflict, the running war in Ukraine, nothing seems to move crude oil. It is still in that band. Very merrily it is sitting there. And this damn thing had to happen after I retired. During my term, it went from $80 to $100 a barrel. But now it is very calm, $60 to $70. But the new type of volatility has crept in. That volatility is the source volatility. The price volatility is not there. But today, we are having sanctions that we should not buy from oil from two Russian companies, that is Rosneft and Lukoil. We cannot buy oil from Iran. We cannot buy oil from Venezuela. So today, the world is seeing a different type of volatility called excess volatility. The oil may be there, it is priced right, but you don't know how it will come to your Indian refineries. So this is a different type of challenge that we have to face today. And as you will be aware that last month, Trump administration had banned two Russian companies, Rosneft and Lukoil, and India was buying nearly 40% of our crude oil from Russia. So this 40% was because of the discounts they offered. So, just after the Ukraine war started, bulk of the oil before the war used to go to Europe and some part to China. As the war began, Europe shut down the oil, and suddenly there was no buyer, there was no home for Russian oil. And that's where India stepped in because of the discounts they offered. They had to find the oil to be disposed of because you can't store oil indefinitely. So they gave the discounts, and because of the discounts, we got addicted to the discounts. And what was 0.2% of Russian oil before the Ukraine war, we went up to 24, 36, and 40% of the crude oil came from Russia. Now, this is not a very healthy situation. To put all your eggs in one basket is not something good. So we have to diversify our sources. So ideally will be about 20% Russian oil, 40 to 50% comes from Middle East. Now, Middle East is something that is always going to be India's most favored destination, most favored geography for getting the crude oil. The reason is simple. The Middle Eastern crude gives the best type of products for the Indian economy. I think I should tell you that India is a diesel economy. 45% of the Indian production of the refineries is diesel, not gasoline, not petrol. Petrol is just 15%. So whichever crude gives a very high degree of diesel is the crude preferred by India. And the Middle Eastern crudes are just fitting that bill. Moreover, the freight, the cost of the crude to come from Middle East to India is the cheapest. Because the refineries normally operate in very wafer-thin margins. The margins are very thin. So we need whatever we can save on freight, I think it saves us. So the freight charges from Middle East to India is the least. So Middle Eastern crude makes more sense in that way also. And then we have to also have the basket, some amount of coming from USA. Because USA, I just want to tell you, is the world's biggest producer of crude oil and natural gas. This is not probably known to everybody because we always attribute the maximum crude oil production to Saudi Arabia, but actually it is USA. And even the natural gas and the LNG. Normally LNG we always associate with Qatar as the world's largest producer, but now it is USA. In fact, the entire gas going to Europe today is going from US. That is the liquefied natural gas. So we have to keep some amount of US grade also in our basket, some West African grades, that is Nigeria, Middle East, and Russia. So we have to balance our crude basket. So that will be one of the policy options of having a diverse crude oil basket. We spoke of strategic reserves, which is very, very important for taking care of any situation which interrupts the oil flow. There is one more point that is very much happening in the countries like Japan and China. That is called as equity oil. Equity oil means I may not have oil in my own backyard, like India. We don't have much of oil in the backyard. But at least I can book some equity in the oil fields abroad. So Japan has got nearly 40% of its crude oil as equity oil. So it's a very measured, calculated move by Japan, and same with China. Nearly 27% of Chinese imports come as equity oil. And Japan, the best planners they are in the world, most important, they always are famous for that. They have already made a plan that by 2030, that 40% equity oil will become 50%, and by 2040, 60% of the Japanese crude oil will be their own oil in fields abroad. Now, this is also one excellent move to de-risk your oil imports, because you are owning that oil in some other geography. So this is also one of the policy options which India has got to improve our equity oil percentage abroad. And as I was telling you, the oil that is remaining calm today, like the Goldilocks principle, not too hot, not too cold. The reason for that, one of the main reasons is today the world is seeing excess of oil. Guyana has recently found a lot of oil. Same thing with Brazil, Argentina, and of course US. US oil is nearly 13.5 million barrels per day and is increasing. So because of this excess oil that is available in the world, the oil markets are stable. So this is the time, if India proceeds for getting more equity oil, more stake in the oil fields abroad, I think everybody will welcome that, because those countries which are having excess oil require a good oil security for themselves, that somebody is there to buy that oil in the days to come. So oil security point of view, equity oil, then high storage. And one more point that is very important is we have to utilize our own resources, what we are rich in. Now, India is extremely rich in coal, though the quality of coal is not very high, not very good, because the ash content is quite high, but then we have to live with that. So increasing our coal gasification, that will be one of the options to improve the energy security of the country. More and more coal should go in for coal gasification, make more gas. Even hydrogen can be made from syngas, because once you gasify coal and make it into syngas, you can make anything out of that. So one of the options of India is to make use of its coal gasification as one of the levers to counter the high imports. You can't reduce the imports, but even if you stabilize the imports, I think that will be also a big deal. One more factor that I think I should share with you, all of you, is that overall the energy that comes in the country is in two forms. One is the electron and one is a molecule. India today has got about 18% of its total energy in the form of electrons, means electricity. And what is molecule? Molecule is oil, gas, whatever. So we have to shift from molecules to electrons. China very consciously did that. They went in for more and more electrification. And today, China, the electron percentage is nearly 32. We are hovering at 18. So I think that is also one area India should seriously look into, to convert more into electron-based economy, more electrical energy-based economy than a molecule-based economy, because that will also give us some relief in our energy imports. In fact, in the year 2014, India consumed about 88 million tons of crude oil for $1 trillion of our GDP. Today, 2025, we are consuming 65 million tons of crude oil per $1 trillion of GDP. So this is a good sign. The energy density of our GDP, the oil density, has come down from 88 to 66. Now this is something good. So we need to improve our GDP, because we are all aware that we are trying for a $5 trillion GDP. So that GDP should be less and less dependent on crude oil. So the trend is already there. I think we can do better. Now coming down to the other aspects you must be wondering why I'm not talking of solar and wind. Solar and wind, we always go by the headlines. That so many gigawatts of solar plant commissioned, so many gigawatts of wind power is commissioned. But the real challenge to these two forms of energy is the stability of the grid. India, even in the state like Rajasthan, nearly 10 to 15% of our solar energy is stranded energy. In the sense, we are unable to take it to the grid. Because we have built the solar panels, we have built the steam turbines, but we have not built the wires. So investing in the grid is equally important than just putting up solar and wind plants. This is also one area where the country should seriously look into, because stranded power is of no use. On paper, we have got a power plant running, but the power is not reaching the homes and the industries. In fact, you will not believe, there was a big blackout that happened in Spain, parts of France, in the Iberian Peninsula. I forget the month, the date, it was in the month of April. The blackout lasted for nearly 1 day. 1 day, Spain was without power. And the reason why it happened was the grid was unable to take the surge in the power coming from wind and solar. In fact, a few days before, Spain celebrated a day where their entire grid was based on renewables. And just few days later, there was a blackout of 24 hours. So that was also a lesson to the entire world, that what percentage of renewables and solar should be there in the grid. We require stable power from coal, gas, and nuclear. That is called as dispatchable power, so that the grid remains steady. And looking at that lesson, all the other countries have picked up and made some corrections. So India too, today the Indian grid, if you see how much of electricity, nearly 75% of the Indian grid is coming from coal. And nearly 12 to 13% comes from renewables, that is solar and wind, and about 8 to 10% comes from hydro. So this is also a good sign that our grid is not predominantly dependent on solar and wind. But over a period of time, the solar and wind percentages are bound to go up. But then it should be very clearly understood that the dispatchable power, the power that is available from sources like coal, oil, should continue to be the main backbone. Because you can imagine suddenly a big cloud cover comes. The solar energy goes to zero instantaneously. So instantaneously you should have the capacity to put in that much of power, which can only come by coal and which can come by gas. Of course, globally coal is not being used, it is more of gas. So this is also one lesson for us, to have more and more dispatchable power available with us, along with the wind and solar, so that the grid is not predominantly dominated by the renewables, but is a balance between renewables as well as the dispatchable power. Finally, I want to tell one more thing, that today when the oil consumption is going up, we are also finding new oil. We are trying to invest to get new oil. You must have read everywhere, some places, that we are investing in Andamans in the deep water. But as the oil prices are remaining very, very stable, this is also becoming a risk, because deep water drilling has got its own costs. So we have to now strike a balance that how much to invest in new oil fields, because they should be economically viable to give us a proper return in the days and years to come. And if the oil itself is remaining very cheap, then whether we need to really go for new oil finds, that also needs to be understood. In fact, 2 days back, you might have read that the oil from Russia has fallen to $39 per barrel, just $39. So we are now in an era of very, very cheap oil prices. And this is the time where we have to secure the equity oil, and at the same time take a conscious call whether how much of it we should find ourselves, or whether we should go for more storages. This is a time where we have to take some hard decisions. And I am sure we are going in the right path, because everybody understands that vulnerability in the oil imports is not a very happy situation. So I think I can leave it for some question answers now.
You can also touch upon the green hydrogen
Okay, fine. Because that is not, he may not like it. Okay, so one more thing what I want to tell you is that oil companies are no more fossil companies. They were once upon a time fossil fuel companies, but now they are energy companies. We have now started investing in green hydrogen. We have started electric mobility. And in the area of green hydrogen, we have now invested in Panipat, a plant of 100 KTA to supply green hydrogen. What is green hydrogen, by the way? Today, the refineries use hydrogen to desulfurize. So whatever sulfur is there in the crude oil, we need to bring it out. So that is done by desulfurization. So the sulfur comes out in the form of hydrogen sulfide, and hydrogen sulfide eventually we remove the elemental sulfur and sell the elemental sulfur. So currently all the hydrogen, the world consumes about 100 million tons of grey hydrogen. So this hydrogen comes exclusively from natural gas as on date. Now there is a move to decarbonize the world economy, whether we can make it from electricity and solar energy. We can create electricity and we can split water. Water is H2O, 2 parts of hydrogen, 1 part of oxygen. So we want to split this water molecule to make hydrogen. Now this is a very, very high energy intensive process. It requires huge amount of energy to split the water molecule. And this energy we are trying to get it from sun and the wind. Here, since I have touched the topic, you might have read many headlines that the solar energy power in India has come down to 2 rupees per unit. Have you read anybody? You might have read 1 rupee 99 paisa. These are all headlines. Don't get carried away with that. Because what they indicate is that is the amount of rupees per watt during the hours of the sun. During the peak sun hours, they can get something of that value. But after the sun hours are over, there is no energy. And if you want to store the energy during the day and then use it in the night, then it costs money. So eventually the cost comes to 4.5 rupees per kilowatt. That is the real cost. Don't get carried away by the headlines of 1 rupee 99 paisa per unit. It is not real fact. So now we are trying to make green hydrogen, that is splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen. And now this is the experiment that the world is doing now, and a lot of hope is there on this particular aspect because of the simple reason that water is freely available, sun is available, and the wind is available. So on paper it looks very, very rosy, but it is not at all rosy. So today the hydrogen that we produce from natural gas, that is called grey hydrogen, is costing about $1 per kg. And what we make by splitting of water is coming down to $4.5 per kg. And hydrogen, let me tell you, is a very colorful character. It has got a lot of colors. One is gray, one is green, and one is blue. The blue hydrogen is what? When you create hydrogen by natural gas, but you capture the CO2 and put it back in the earth, that is called blue hydrogen. All these are very costly options and nothing nowhere compared to the cost we currently have of $1 per kg. So let us see, normally it is said that with scale, if you increase the scale, the cost will come down. But here I think we should understand the cost breakup of the green hydrogen. Nearly 70% or 60% of the cost is coming from the cost of electricity, and that is from wind and solar, 60%. And 40% comes from electrolyzer, that equipment which actually splits the water. Now, electrolyzer is hard metallurgy. It's exchangers, it's pipes, it's pumps. We don't expect those costs to fall so dramatically, 4 times. And same with the cost of electricity. As I told you, we don't expect the cost to come down 6 times. So the chances of green hydrogen coming down to 1 kg, which is the cost of the grey hydrogen, looks very, very unlikely. But I'm not here to say no. Let us wait and see. We may find something. It may be the silver bullet that we're all waiting for decarbonization. Here also one important fact is, one of the sectors like aviation. Aviation is called as the hard to abate sector. Today there is no alternative for aviation turbine fuel, that is called jet fuel. Why? For the simple reason, batteries are very, very heavy. So you might not have heard of anybody trying to fly an aeroplane with a battery, because the battery weight itself will be immense and it will be an uneconomical venture. So more and more now thought is being given how to get rid of this hard to abate sectors which are not really easy to decarbonize. And let me tell you, today the world consumes about 7 million barrels of crude oil only for aviation turbine fuel. And that cost is going to go up. That consumption is going to go to nearly 9 million barrels per day of aviation turbine fuel. I think we all understand the reason why. Most of us are flying now. People, I don't think in this room, anybody is traveling by rail. Everybody is flying because flying has become cheaper. But let me tell you, flying is extremely harmful to the environment from the purpose of greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, I was just doing a study. Mumbai, Pune, there are so many flights. I think it's criminal to fly from Bombay to Pune, because the amount of greenhouse gas emissions you do in a flight from Bombay to Pune is something that you cannot imagine. It is 4 times that which is done by railways. And I think Bombay-Pune is so well connected, but still there are people who are flying. I'll give you an example of China. China has got 45,000 kilometers of high-speed rail, 45,000 kilometers. And their high-speed rail means railways running at 300 to 350 kilometers per hour, really high speed. And due to this excellent service of the railways, the flight services between Guangzhou, from Beijing and Shanghai has come down by 40%. That is the way to decarbonize your economy, by high-speed rail, and the people are more and more willing to go, because the overall cost, what they say from door to door, the time difference is not much. If you travel by something of 300 kilometers per hour, you can say Bombay-Delhi, it is about 1200 kilometers. So 4 hours of travel time. Plus in the airport, you go beforehand, security and all that. So eventually the door-to-door time is hardly any difference. So I think India can also go in that direction by railways, because today the way we are trying to decarbonize the aviation sector is by sustainable aviation fuel, SAF. Now SAF is made from biosources, and it is more than 6 times costly than the normal aviation turbine fuel. And today the mandate is 1% of the aviation turbine fuel will be blended with SAF by 2028 and 3% by 2030. I don't think this is really going to make a big difference to the decarbonization efforts, but something like the railways, what China has done, the high-speed railway network, if it is coming up in the country, not only in every part of the country, but at least joining the main 8 metros, then it will reduce our flights. 60% of the flights are between the 8 metros. So even if the 8 metros are well connected by high-speed rail, and even if 10-30% of the flights get replaced by railway, I mean the passengers prefer railway, I think that will be also one big step towards decarbonization. So I think these are all factors which are already happening in the world. We are not trying to find something new. We are not trying to discover anything. Whatever China, Japan are doing, I think even if we replicate that, then I think that will be also one very big step towards decarbonization. And finally, I'll close it with nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is the only real high density energy which can replace oil. So I think research is on for creating these small modular reactors. It's not yet come online, but India today, we are just consuming about 1.5% of our energy comes from nuclear. So there is a big scope for the nuclear energy to grow. And I think one of the main factors of nuclear energy is the fear among the people that nuclear energy is not safe. So that campaign that the nuclear energy is not safe, because certain accidents like Chernobyl in Russia and the Fukushima in Japan, they are very much high in the minds of people, and that is why the nuclear power is getting a bad name. But it is not so. In fact, in the Fukushima accident, there was not even a single casualty due to the nuclear energy. So I think we should go on adopting more and more nuclear energy, because that will be one big area to electrify our energy consumption. What I was saying in the beginning, to have more electrons From the 18%, we need to go up. So I think nuclear power will be one big help to all of us in decarbonizing the economy. So I think we have some questions lined up, Dr. Patil, the Professor was saying. So I think I'm ready for that. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vaidya. As a matter of fact, earlier when I spoke about him, I talked about his capabilities and his achievements. But you saw the passion. I mean, the way he spoke, it was a passionate speech, both in terms of knowledge and appeal. So I think we're really, truly grateful. Actually, I want to take advantage of your presence here. One of our areas that I showed you initially on a slide, where PIC is doing research and studies, is the Center for Sustainable Energy and Mobility. And we have, again, one of our eminent scholars, Mahesh Devdhar here. They have done a fair amount of study in that direction, and I'd request you to kindly give him some time, which I'll request him now to come up, and he would like to place their findings before you, not only to pick your brains, but also to, by way of further guidance as to where do we go from here. But having said that, and I hope I'm not putting the cart before the horse, but after that dialogue, I dare say that we'd like to follow this up on many one-on-one kind of dialogues with you, making use of your presence in Pune. So without further ado, may I request Mahesh, please come up and make a small presentation that you wanted to.
Thank you very much, General Patantar sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Vaidya. It was really an insightful presentation, a lot of data, a lot of facts. And in many ways, you have made my job simple, because I absolutely echo what you talked about hydrogen. So today what I'm going to do is, in the next 10 minutes, I just want to talk about our analysis of where the green hydrogen ecosystem development in India stands, and what do we do next. And the idea is to, all the issues that he has talked about hydrogen, they are absolutely right. So we are just kind of taking a step forward to come up with some specific workable, economically viable solutions that will help in our hydrogen economy, because we believe hydrogen is a very critical component of our future energy system. So before I start, so I head the Center for Sustainable Energy and Mobility. So we basically work at the intersection of technology, engineering, and economics. And as you know, PIC has a strength in terms of policy research, policy design, policy advocacy. We do something similar. So just to give you an example, earlier this year, the Transport Department of Government of Maharashtra invited us to write the policy, EV policy. And we led the formulation of that policy. So any of you are having electric cars, and if you're traveling from Pune to Mumbai and on Atal Setu, you would find there are no tolls for you. And so you can thank me later for that. But that was one of the suggestions that we gave, because we thought it's important that people need to be encouraged to use electric vehicles across different cities. So, but there are many other suggestions that we made, and fortunately all those were accepted. So those are the kind of things that we do overall. We work on several areas, but I'll not work on all the things that we do. Yeah. So just go back to the second slide. So basically, I want to focus on, the next slide. So what is the role of green hydrogen? And I think sir talked about the current grey hydrogen consumption that we have. It's around 6.5 million ton per annum that we consume, mostly in fertilizer. That's in India, just in India. Absolutely, absolutely. Just in India, it's in the Indian energy system. And of course, as he was mentioning, the hard to abate sector, because we haven't found really the decarbonization strategy for the sectors like cement, then steel and some of the other chemicals. So that is one more big area that we need to look at. But also the mobility. And he talked about the sustainable aviation fuel, which is basically hydrogen can be one way pathway to reach that. Other than there is another pathway, HEFA and other things, but I'll leave at that. Marine is another big area. These are all large ships you need to carry, and with the diesel and other things are very convenient. But hydrogen is the next promising fuel. And also on the road transport, what we see is the light vehicles are suitable for electrification, but for heavy duty and long distance vehicles, where diesel is the main fuel, hydrogen is going to play a critical role in our analysis. Next, please. So what is that India is doing? So I just want to give you a brief overview. India, look at the current setup, and China, of course, have taken a lead. As in any other energy sector, they are having 60% of electrolyzer, the equipment that it is needed to split the water. They have 60% market share for that. So China has taken a lead. But first time India also kind of started around 3 years back in January 23. With a sizable budget allocation of around 20,000 crore, we started this mission, National Green Hydrogen Mission. Two things I want to highlight. It's not only about the hydrogen generation, but it's hydrogen generation, distribution, consumption. So it looks at the entire ecosystem, number one. And number two is also the whole idea is to reduce the dependence on fossil fuels. And this target was set was almost 1 lakh crore. So that is a target. And as we have seen, as we have heard, India has a huge dependence on imported fuel. So this is one area that hydrogen is expected to play a critical role. Next, please. So the hydrogen mission came up with all these objectives, and there is a lot of budget allocation. So perhaps this is one of the sector that has got several incentives put into this sector. So there is a PLI, production linked incentive for electrolyzer manufacturing. There are incentives for each kilogram of green hydrogen that and green hydrogen, as he has explained, is basically used, the renewable energy is used to generate the hydrogen. The technical definition is you should have less than 2 kilogram of CO2 equivalent while you create that hydrogen. That's the standard. But that's what we are looking at, and that's the green hydrogen. And so every kg that you create, you kind of get some incentive. Interestingly, it's not just about the central government. There are almost, to the last count, around 15 states which have actually rolled out their own hydrogen policies. And they have given a lot of waivers on the transmission because, hydrogen through electrolysis needs to be generated by using a renewable energy. So you need to get that energy from the place of generation, transmit it, bring it to the electrolyzer location and generate the hydrogen. So there are a lot of waivers that have been given. So a lot of financial benefits that have been offered in hydrogen sector. Next, please. What has happened so far? So this is a great initiative by the government, but as of August 2025, we have almost 158 projects that have been announced with the total hydrogen generation capacity of around 12 million tons of green hydrogen. But surprisingly, not surprisingly maybe, but only 2.8% of that is operational, of that capacity. And rest all is sort of languishing. The announcements have been made, but it is not moving forward. And it's not just the current, it's been 3 years, but it's not just the current stage. Going forward also there is no visibility that the things will improve rapidly. And the hydrogen, electrolyzer-based hydrogen is going to have its own challenges. In fact, as recently as last, I think couple of weeks back, our MNRE secretary announced that the whole green hydrogen mission is going to get delayed by at least couple of years. So, people have seen.
We had a target of 5 million.
Absolutely. 3 million, absolutely. And it's just the global, it's true everywhere. Everywhere people are feeling, whether it's the real solution or not. And it is happening in India also. A lot of actors are feeling, slightly disillusioned with the promise of green hydrogen. And that's where we were discussing internally as to what needs to happen, because hydrogen is such a critical component of future energy system. So what do we do about it? And that's where we came up with another approach, which is biomass-based hydrogen. And I want to talk a little about that. Let's go to the next this thing. But first, what are the reasons for this slow progress? So we actually kind of went step by step. So it's not progressed as well. The real reasons are basically there is no demand, and there is no demand because unlike other sources, renewable energy, there is something called RPO, renewable obligations, purchase obligations. There are announcements that were made in policy, but they were not implemented. So the fertilizer companies and the refineries, they are not mandated to buy this green hydrogen. So it doesn't create a demand, and then the investors and the people who want to invest will not see the clear line of sight in terms of getting the return on investment, and the investment doesn't happen. There are also differences in the standards. So India has, as I said, 2 kilogram of CO2 equivalent for green hydrogen. It's around 3.38 in Europe, 4 in US. So it's all sorts of things over the place. There is also infrastructure, because hydrogen is a very light element, the first element in the periodic table. It needs a lot of investment in terms of the infrastructure, storage, transport, even the transmission lines for electricity when it gets generated and it needs to be brought to electrolyzer plant. Those kind of investments are needed. As he was saying, there is a lot of stranded solar generation because of these lack of transmission. So all those things are happening. But the most significant of this is the cost of hydrogen. As he was saying rightly, the cost of hydrogen, our analysis shows that it's somewhere in the range of 410 to 480 rupees per kg of green hydrogen using electrolyzer. So that is the biggest concern, because nobody is willing to shift from grey hydrogen to green hydrogen at such a huge cost difference. So why this whole green hydrogen price? So we did further analysis. We double clicked on why the prices are high. He's already explained, he's made my job easy, but basically the cost of electricity, you need almost 55 units per kg of hydrogen when you split the water. Also the cost of electrolyzer, these are the two main cost components, but there are other components like cost of water, cost of transmission, the land. So all those things add up, and that kind of makes the whole green hydrogen expensive. If you look at the current cost, it's around 410 to 480. When we did our scenario, and when we looked at how the energy prices are going to go down, how the electrolyzer prices are going to go down, we still saw that by 2030 we are expecting the price to go to lowest is 356 rupees per kg, which is still significantly higher compared to the grey hydrogen cost that we have. We did one more calculation, because ultimately the whole focus is to reduce the dependency on diesel. So what it takes to, if you want to replace the diesel operated freight and long distance travel using hydrogen, what will it take? And then we did that calculation based on the mileage, based on the per liter cost, and the vehicle carrying capacity and all those analysis. And we realized that if the cost of hydrogen at the dispensal, if it's between 240 to 260, then it works well and it brings parity, and you can replace the diesel-based transport with hydrogen. But for that to happen, the generation has to happen at 180 to 220 rupees. So I want to put these numbers together, and I'll come back to that later when I summarize that. Let's move to the... there is one more challenge that, the electrolyzer technology is also, as I was saying, China has taken a lead. 60% electrolyzer manufacturing happens in China. So we also need to look at the strategic autonomy of country like India, where we can't have energy dependence. So this is where we will, we focused on this part as well. There is also, all these imports that we have, we need to, remove those, and we need to have some indigenous technology for that. Last slide, I think biomass-based hydrogen is extremely critical in our view. India has, and again, there is a lot of land available, but we don't want to have a food versus fuel conflict when we use the cultivable land. So we looked at the degraded land in India. We have around 97 million hectares of degraded land. And even if 10% of that can be brought under cultivation, and there are two crops that are available, Napier and energy cane, if they can be used, and then that can generate almost 30 million tons of green hydrogen. The interesting thing is technology is completely indigenous. We have the complete ownership. We have those kind of plants, and in fact, IOCL has done it in IISC. It needs to improve. The TRL, as we call it, the technology readiness level needs to go up, but these are indigenous technologies. And lastly, the price point. What we have observed is our calculation shows that the prices of biomass-based hydrogen is around 180 to 200. So it fits really well if you want to decarbonize the diesel consumption in long-distance heavy-duty transport. So Apart from biomass, there are a couple other pathways. I'll not dwell deeper, but something called white hydrogen. So there is some reserves that have been found in Andaman. These are basically underground reserves of hydrogen. You just need to extract and use those. Very early stages. There are other technologies called photoelectrochemical, the photobiological. Again, multiple pathways, but they are very early. But we need to invest as a country to build that so that we are able to see the green hydrogen, coming up and the potential is realized. So, and then the last slide on the summary, if you, so this is what we have found in our analysis. I just want to put it in front of you. The green hydrogen is definitely very critical in our view for the future energy landscape. The current focus is completely on electrolyzer-based hydrogen, which we feel is not going to do the job with all the things that we've seen. So we need to address that, and biomass-based hydrogen is a good pathway, and we need to work further on that. Apart from tapping the export, but there's a lot of focus on export because India is blessed with favorable conditions in terms of solar availability and all that. But before we do export, we also need to look at the domestic consumption, and that's one more area that we thought we need to change in terms of our approach towards National Green Hydrogen Mission. And lastly, all these numbers that as I mentioned, we see that biomass-based hydrogen definitely has a much lower cost point as well as price point at dispensing. So it's definitely an option which can be considered for replacing the long distance heavy duty and of course for the other purposes of mobility as well. But that's it really from my side, and thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to share our views. And as I said, we'll be more than happy, and we would really invite your suggestions and inputs to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahesh sir, for sharing these beautiful or great insights. Now we move to the Q&A session, which will be moderated by Lieutenant General Vinayak Pathak. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. If you can hear me at the back, just raise your hand. Thank you. Thanks. We now have some time for questions. So if you can just raise your hand, and I'll try and spot you with all these lights staring me in the... that's much better. Yes, that lady at the back.
Easy questions, difficult Google.
Okay, please say who you give out your name and the institution or the organization that you represent, and state your question.
Hi, sir. I'm Seena. I'm a researcher in PIC. So we all know that China has focused on securing the energy supply by approving the no-coal power plants, and even though they are also investing in the renewables. So when it comes to the India, the condition of the energy in India is worse than China. So what are the lessons that we can learn from China to implement in India to for the security of the energy? Thank you.
Yeah, there's some more. So there'll be more or less.
Okay, right. Any other? We can club them together and then request the speaker to answer them. Okay, there is one gentleman there. That's right.
Yeah.
Deshpande. That's right.
So good afternoon, good evening rather. My name is Kaustubh Deshpande. I am a founder of a EV company and a battery company currently operating in Indonesia and now entering India. My question is, you mentioned like the energy, the electron energy is currently 18% in India and has to move, like China is already 32. So when we talk about the electric mobility or electrical energy in that way, it would be largely coming from the battery side of things. China is again controlling the entire supply chain.
Okay, you sir, I'll come back to you. Yes.
I'm Deshpande, formerly from ONGC, corporate head of corporate planning. I have two questions to ask. One, first thing is our production is hovering around 25 to 30 million tons for over 2 decades in domestic production. And which is the equity contribution, equity oil contribution to that, first thing. And what are the recent actions to increase the equity contributions lately. In my time, I knew that how much was there. Presently also, there is some contribution. And second question is that about the coal you said. Coal gasification and the coal production, again, is not very environmental friendly. And there is tremendous opposition from all, I have been dealing with, I'm working after subsequently also in private sector till now. And I see tremendous opposition from the Central Environmental Control Board in Nagpur and other places. So it is too difficult to again switch over from oil to coal or to replace to some part of our energy requirement from coal. There are two questions. And thirdly, actually, I want to say that we are the third largest consumer of crude oil in the world, just after US and China. And if you say that we want to equate or make it, say, close to anywhere China or America, then requirement will be tremendously high. And whether country will be able to afford. Because as I said, how much is the import bill for that is extremely very high. Percentage of total import that is, runs in a very major part of our imports are spent. Import bills are spent on the oil imports. So there are few things which came in my mind. Certainly, I would like to have some illumination from you. Thank you very much.
I'll answer that question about equity oil. Actually, India today has got less than 10% of its oil as equity oil. And one of the reasons why I'm insisting now is, today we are in, as I was telling you, we are in an oil surplus scenario. The oil prices have stabilized, in fact, they are going down. So this is the time when you should go and get more equity oil. You can't go in during the high price era because then it will not be affordable. So this is the time probably to go for more equity oil because the major suppliers are also looking for security of their oil supplies. So I think this is a good time to do that. Secondly, when a country progresses, obviously its oil consumption is going to go up. So I'm not saying we will go and touch USA numbers because they're too high. In terms of oil, I can say USA is consuming 20 barrels per person per year. India is about 1.6. But China is 6. So at least we have to increase, because if at all we have a plan and a dream of becoming a developed country, oil consumption is bound to go up. It's as simple as that. We can't have a stable oil consumption and say I'm going to become a developed economy. So that is ruled out. So, and regarding the import bill, well, the economy will also grow, no? It is not that today I'm going to buy oil equal to China. As the economy will also grow due to the economic activities, so the import bill will be certainly manageable even in those times. So I don't think that's a problem that way. So the main problem is what you said about coal gasification. It produces a lot of CO2. So I think this is the opportune time for India to also practice CCUS, carbon capture and storage. Because since we are not blessed with good quality coal, but we are blessed with a lot of coal, so I think we should go for coal gasification and also develop carbon capture and storage so that the whatever CO2 part, what you're saying, which is obviously a big concern, can also be addressed. So we need to do a lot of research in CCUS. Yeah.
I am BH Shrikant, ethanol industrial consultant. This is interaction. Ever since National Biofuels Policy 2018 was declared by the Government of India, the role of ethanol in Indian energy sector is rapidly rising. Surprisingly, you have not covered up that ethanol role in energy sector.
I think ethanol we have already reached 20% to the best of my. Yeah. And at this point of time, we don't foresee any big jump from the ethanol. We have already reached the saturation point in ethanol. And ethanol cannot be blended with diesel. You must be well aware, because the flash point of the diesel will come down drastically. So it can only be clubbed with gasoline. And I think we have already reached that level. That's why I didn't mention that. It is not an upcoming fuel. It has already reached a maturity level.
The typical composition of gas oil is 24% ethanol and 76% gasoline. Up to 24% is still 4% we have to reach, and that will require about 700 crore liters of ethanol.
See, beyond 20%, you also require modification in the engine.
Yeah. Certain modification has to be there.
So far,
engine.
whatever we are talking.
About 24%.
Yeah, so that is the reason it will be a very big call by the country whether I should go in for that, because the engine modification will come there. And the automobile companies may not be in a position to do that, because on one side we have a threat of EVs. And on the other side, if we say you modify the engine for higher ethanol percentage, it's becoming a conflicting issue. So that is the reason why ethanol more or less has reached the stability value.
Yeah. There is a lot of automobile engineering criteria.
Yes.
Discrimination. Yeah. Thank you.
I'll come back.
Yeah. My name is Kaushik Shekhar. I'm a financial markets participant and also a member of PIC. So my question is that you had mentioned that the incremental demand in India is almost 50%. It will be in the coming years. So is this a new situation where we are actually going to drive demand? Because there's hardly anybody else going to drive demand. Other countries are having reducing populations and so many other situations. Also, many of the producers, their own economies need a lot of taxation. So in balance, do the producers have more pressure, economic security, or do the consumers like us who don't have oil, who has more pressure from energy, either selling security or buying security?
Obviously the buying security, no? Your whole country will come to a standstill if you don't get oil. So the pressure is on us. That is the reason why we are talking in a turmoil. What is the way to path forward? Since we are so much dependent on the external sources, we are under tremendous pressure to ensure that there is no interruption of any form. I'll give you an example of LPG. Today, by virtue of the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana scheme, practically LPG has reached 99.99% of the population. And we have stopped kerosene, as you may be aware. Kerosene is no more available in the country. So we are totally dependent on LPG. Now LPG, 50% of LPG we import as LPG, and 90% of crude I'm importing as crude. So practically 100% of LPG is dependent on the outside sources. And you can imagine an interruption in the LPG supply chain will create havoc in the country. So I think we have to be absolutely very clear that what is the dependence we have created and how we have to circumvent that. And you can't reduce the imports, as we have seen. So you can only go for the other options like improved storage and equity oil.
Nitin, you had a...
Yeah. About the how to convert from molecule to electron. I mean, basically you have to convert the industry to electrons. Today, the entire heating in the industry is done by coal and gas. China has gone in a big way for the electric arc furnaces. And that is the reason they have converted more and more of the industries into electrical heating. And that is how the electron percentage has gone up. It is not because of mobility. It is because of the industrial use. And India today, industrial use is predominantly oil and gas. So I think we have to really look into this matter on how to electrify our industrial sector so that the electron percentage goes up.
Good evening.
Question answered?
Yeah,
At the back?
same thing it was.
Yep, okay.
Good evening.
Yes, Mr. Mirashi, you had a question, yeah?
No, there is one really standing there.
Oh, I'll come back to you. I'll come back.
You have mentioned the storage capacity of Japan, 120 days.
242 days.
240 days. But what is the India's capacity?
India is hardly 30 days. 30. Actually, to store crude oil is a lot of money. Because that crude oil has to be just stagnant. It can't be used. It's a strategic storage. So huge amount of capex gets locked up.
That's right. One moment, you'll get the
The continuation of this question maybe. I'm Simran Singh from Symbiosis Institute of International Business, and I'm pursuing MBA in Sustainability Management. The follow-up question was, I read it somewhere that the energy security of India, I'm not sure if we're only talking about the oil conserve that India has and its the energy security for 30 days. But I read it somewhere that if a situation like blackout or something like that happens, India will be able to, continue its energy supply for the next 90 days, combining the coal and the oil reserves that India has. So I'm not sure if it's 30 days.
You're mixing up two things. Oil is basically for mobility. Coal is not for mobility. Coal is for power generation. So they're different things. We're not comparing apples and oranges.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So oil is basically for a different purpose. Coal is not interfering in the oil sector and oil is not interfering in coal. They're two different silos.
Okay, thank you.
You had a question, sir, at the back? Yeah. Yes, that's...
Thank you, finally. Good evening, I'm Sukratu Anil Barve from University of Pune, Savitribai Phule Pune University. I have a question regarding the consumption of oil. You mentioned the transportation sector towards the end of your talk. And you mentioned that mostly the transportation between the four metros is probably going to be important. So nonetheless, it had me thinking, India already has a policy for developing inland waterways. There's an Inland Waterways Authority. Of course, there are other problems with this project. But how I would have your comments on suppose we decided to go in for inland waterways in a major way. What would be the effect of that on the consumption of oil? Do you see any in your view?
No, my reference to the 8 metros, which constitute 55% of the total flights in India, they fly in these 8 metros: Bombay, Delhi, Chennai, Calcutta. So it was with respect to reducing the air traffic by using the high-speed railways. And air traffic is one of the biggest, today airlines contribute nearly 3.5% of the global CO2. So one of the ways of decarbonizing the airline industry was this option I was considering.
Yes, please. I'll come back to you.
Good evening, sir. I'm Kamal from Symbiosis International Institute. Sir, my question is, now world is into a transition state. Like, for example, let's take cars. It's EV battery cars versus it's a fuel car. Hydrogen. So in the future, like a fuel cell gonna win or EV cell gonna win?
You tell me. You must have thought something, no, before asking.
Sir, I think it's EV, sir.
Actually, one more thing I want to talk about the electric mobility. Today our grid is 75% grey. It is coming from coal. So in such a grid, if you have an electric vehicle, I really don't know what purpose it is serving. Because electric vehicles have no tailpipe emissions, but the emission is happening at the coal-fired power plant. So EV, for a country like India, it is also given as emissions elsewhere. The emission is not at the tailpipe, it is going elsewhere. So I think that also needs to be understood. What purpose actually the EV is serving for a country where the grid is predominantly black?
I'm afraid there are still 2-3 hands going up, but I'll have to disappoint you because unfortunately our speaker has another speaking engagement 45 minutes from now, and he has go to all the way to Pimpri Chinswad area. So you'll allow me to... Okay. Between the two of you, you decide who's going to ask that question. Okay. All right. Students take priority, so I suppose...
Hello, sir. I'm Ariman from SIIB. So my question would be on the ethanol push of the country. Like, we have achieved E20, but government claims benefits to farmers and all the emission reductions it's speaking about. But we are not technologically that competent to inhabit ethanol because vehicles before 2023 are facing issues in the engine part because as ethanol is hydroscopic in nature. Where Brazil is following this model, but they have the flexibility of ethanol blending. The consumer can choose how much blend of ethanol and how much blend of the fuel. but we...
Come to the question, please.
Yeah, how sustainable is ethanol as a fuel, and what happens if government increases its ethanol blending target, because as we are already technologically incompetent?
Yeah, that question was already answered as far as...
Talk about hydrogen, since there were a lot of questions about hydrogen. The British Prime Minister, 2 Prime Ministers before this, he said that hydrogen is like the Swiss knife. We all have got Swiss knives in home. He was meaning to say that you can do any activity with a Swiss knife. So hydrogen can do anything. But in reality, do we ever use the Swiss knife in our house? We all have got Swiss knives. As a souvenir, we buy it. But it is just lying there. Why? Because there is something better available to do that job. Swiss knife will only be used when nothing else is available. But till such time, other forms of energy are there, which are much better, much efficient. The Swiss knife will never be used. So that was his opinion. This is a food for thought.
It only remains for me now to profusely thank our speaker and request you all to show your appreciation by a round of applause. May I now request our Director, General Gadkari, to please come on stage and felicitate our speaker.
Thank you, sir. To conclude today's session, may I invite Mr. Yash Gupte, Research Associate at CNNSS, to deliver the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Center for National Security Studies at the Pune International Center, it is my privilege to deliver the vote of thanks for today's insightful session on turbulence in the global energy sector, policy options for India. Firstly, I extend our deepest gratitude to Shri Shrikant Vaidya, former chairman of Indian Oil Corporation, for his comprehensive and thought-provoking address. His rich experience and clear articulation of the challenges and strategic choices before India have greatly enriched our understanding about oil and India's energy sector. I also thank Lieutenant General Vinayak Patankar, PVSM, UISM, VSM, Head of CNSS at the Pune International Center, for his guiding leadership, for setting the context through his opening remarks, and for moderating the Q&A session. His stewardship continues to strengthen the work we undertake at the center. Our sincere appreciation goes to Mr. Mahesh Devdar from Center for Sustainable Energy and Mobility for his focused and informative presentation on the green hydrogen, an area of growing national importance. We are grateful for his contribution in broadening the scope of today's discussion. A special thanks to Mr. Kunal Hadavle for anchoring the event with clarity and seamless coordination. I would also like to place on record our heartfelt gratitude to Major General Nitin Gadkari, Director, Pune International Center, for his constant support, encouragement, and guidance. His vision continues to inspire our initiatives at the center. Finally, my thanks to all the participants, colleagues, and the PIC team for making this event a success through your engagement and support. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful evening. Jai Hind.